Every story begins with the land, with people who dare to grow, to lead, and feed the world. This is the Let's Talk Agriculture podcast, where Africa's voice in food and agribusiness meets the global stage.
Hi everyone, Sharon here, and welcome to the Let's Talk Agriculture podcast. Across global agriculture, sustainability reporting is becoming more important than ever. But as companies and governments demand more data from supply chains, many farmers are now being asked to navigate systems they were never really prepared for. So today we are looking at what that actually means for farmers, for agribusinesses, and for the future food systems. And joining me today is Charis, the head of agricultural impact at VSAg, where she works on making sustainability reporting and farm level data collection simpler and more practical for farmers through AI and video based tools. Welcome to the show today, Charis.
Thank you, Sharon. It's great to be here.
Yes, so before we get into the bigger conversation, right, I would honestly just love to start with your journey into this space. How did you find yourself working here? Let's say at the intersection of agriculture, sustainability, and technology.
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose it started originally. So I did an agriculture degree. I always had an interest in agriculture, but not really from a farming background back in the UK. And then after completing that, was worked in the graduate program in the food industry. So and then I worked in sales. So I was working with a lot of people. And in my personal life, then I also found myself on a farm. So I kind of, from both elements, really saw like the importance of sustainability in farming, the importance of agriculture, and it just kind of grew my interest from that. Then I was fortunate enough to do a master's in food sustainability, which just really got me into that area. And thanks to the previous experience, I then was working a lot in like supply chains, so I was in procurement roles and sourcing roles. And within that, I was working either with farm level suppliers or farmers themselves and seeing this constant, a bigger and bigger ask on farmers. And I see it in my personal life as well. And, these farmers are trying their best. Nobody cares more for the land than the farmers. Nobody cares more for the product than the farmers. And yet it's trying to give them the systems that enables them to show kind of the work that's been done. Um, and then what led me to VSAg, I suppose, in Ireland, and again, not sure if you're aware, there's this program called Board Beer, and this allows farm level carbon footprinting. And it's really been able to kind of boost Ireland's productivity in terms of their global reputation, and also their ability to sell. And the farmers, it increases the value of the product that the farmers have here. And so what VSAg does is it's an infrastructure that helps farmers then calculate an accurate carbon footprint. The idea is that it would be led by industry and bringing that value back through the supply chain. Customers would then pay more for the product, but to the true value of the product. And then this would see its way through back to the farmer as well. And in a context they understand. It's a simple app, it's a simple interface, and it allows farmers to be able to just see a video instead of long technical text. Because I myself, working in this space for 10 years, still get lost in the jargon and the acronyms that you find yourself when you're talking about scope 3 and carbon footprinting, for example.
Yeah, I can imagine. But hopefully we can get right into this conversation and you can really get to simplify things for us. But so from your application, right, I one thing actually stood out for me from your work is this growing pressure around sustainability reporting and data collection. So for people listening who may not fully understand what's changing globally right now, what exactly is happening? Why have farmers rather suddenly been asked for so much data? If you can throw
Yeah,
more light on that.
yeah, of course. So, I mean, if you talk about the large manufacturers, all the large food suppliers, they've all signed up to various different reporting frameworks. For example, the SBTI. You have a list of other CSRD. All of these are requiring a certain level of reporting and calculations of your carbon footprint. And when you're talking about carbon footprint, you have your scope 1, your scope 2, and your scope 3. Scope 1 and 2 is very much within your control. It's your operations, your factories, your offices. It's something that you can monitor and you can change or improve as you wish. And then when you get to Scope 3, it becomes completely complex, and you're talking about the rest of your supply chain, upwards and downstream as well. And so that brings in the farmer. So if you're a manufacturer producing crisps, for example, at your factory, this then includes the potatoes that's been produced anywhere in the world that's coming into your supply chain. But you might not necessarily have the information on that farmer in terms of what they're doing on their farm, the processes that are being done, the sustainability initiatives that are being done, the fertilizer application, any of that. And so what was created when this first became an issue was very much global averages. And so you can say, well, if I buy my potatoes from Ireland, for example, which is where I'm based, then this carbon footprint is this specific figure. But actually, it could be completely inaccurate. It could be completely wrong. But it was sufficient enough that it would give the manufacturer enough information that they can report on that, which is great. And it did give us the insight, and it can show you where the rough estimations of where your footprint sits. But I suppose as things have progressed, we're now reaching more and more targets where these infrastructures and these manufacturers have to reach these targets. They have to reduce their carbon footprint, and so you can't necessarily tangibly reduce these carbon footprints if you don't actually know where they are or what that is to bespoke to your supply chain. So I suppose this is where it's coming from. And, for example, the average food producer could have anything up to 70% or more of their carbon footprint sitting at the agricultural supply chain. So this is a huge area of their supply chain, of their carbon footprint, that they don't necessarily have accurate farm data for. And so this is where this increasing need for bespoke actual farm level data that the farmer's comfortable sharing. The farmer gets something back from it as well. This is for them to be in control as well. But it also feeds into the industry so that they can see, the full supply chain across the board and where that carbon footprint sits, and therefore can make initiatives therefore to reduce the footprint and can work with the farmers to see if there's something that's an unnecessary need, to improve efficiencies, to lower costs. And it's all the greater good, really, I suppose. It's not just on the carbon footprint. But that's kind of the backstory. And I think, a lot of companies were setting 2030 targets, 2035 targets, all the way to 2050. And, we've got this next section of time that we need to be able to say, well, actually, this is your footprint and this is how we can reduce it, and giving them that information.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, I'm just really, really learning that we have up to 1, 2, 3 scopes. But right. I mean, that's really complex. I mean, you just even mentioned that scope 3 is the more complex one here, and I believe that there are probably some sort of gaps or frustrations. So maybe you can share what you've been seeing in the current reporting system, because I know for sure that these might sound pretty much straightforward. Um, but for many farmers, especially the smallholder farmers, this is completely different reality. Definitely going to be a different reality. So maybe there are some frustrations you've seen with the current reporting systems that you may want to share.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think, there's a lot of blame on the farmers. I think, I myself, you can see it in the media, or like they're blaming the cows or blaming, and there's a lot of elements. And I still go back to the fact that, the farmer is there to produce the food. They want to produce it to the best of their ability. And so I think it's providing them with the voice and the tools to be able to share what they're actually doing on the farm, how they're improving this, and giving them that information. Because as I've said, and you've agreed, it's a really complex system, and I think I understand why it's there, and I believe in the need for it. But then it leaves the farmer at a loss, and I think this way then, so VSAg is an infrastructure that you'd be able to get it on an app. So, for example, if a manufacturer they wanted to understand what their carbon footprint is, they would be able to share this with all the farmers within their supply chain and just get an accurate carbon footprint to understand where are the hotspots, where are specific areas that actually we could do some significant improvements with this, and really get the value for their carbon footprint. And it allows the farmer then to be able to share their story, share the information they have, and show the kind of either the work they're doing or any elements that they could improve at farm level. Because I think the farmer doesn't necessarily have the opportunity to have a voice in these supply chains. I mean, supply chains could be that, like, you could have so many levels to the supply chain to actually get to where the product is on the shelf. You've got how many farmers involved, and you've got very lots of different players along the line. And so it's really to create this kind of chain of information, a chain of data that can get to the end product, so we know as a consumer what you're getting and where it's coming from and how we can improve, but also as a manufacturer, as a producer, as a supplier, and then as the farmer as well. So it's the whole way along the chain.
Yeah, so if the current systems are becoming difficult, right, or a bit unrealistic for the farmers, what exactly is VSAG trying to do differently?
So VSAg is just making it's bringing it back to the simplest information and the simplest way possible. It's getting rid of the jargon. It's getting rid of like long lists of text that wouldn't necessarily make sense. And it's very video based. So they would see the survey through a video, and you can fill in your answers on a phone, and then this would be then submitted, and they can see their own carbon footprint for their farm. They would get given suggestions on how to improve. They can get any sort of level of interaction if they needed further support to understand how to improve their farm, or how to, if there's a challenge that they're facing, they can get that interaction. And then this information then would be given back, and the data would be given to the manufacturer. And so then they can see their carbon footprint is, and this accurate carbon footprint then can go throughout the supply chain.
I think that's really amazing. So instead of expecting the farmers to fill out these long technical forms, I mean, we are now trying to explore tools as simple as the phones to capture information directly from the farm. That's
Yeah,
great, right? So, okay.
yeah, exactly. And we have farmers from. We currently are trying to. We're launching a pilot in Brazil, and so the scale of Brazil is the same as Africa. It's such a huge area. Trying to reach everyone. The idea with VSAG is it takes in that it's you don't need high connectivity, you don't need significant signal, and you don't actually need to be able to read or to be able to write. You can just answer these information in as the simplest way possible. And I think with the reporting frameworks that are now in place, although they are great and they are providing, they're really overcomplicating the issue. And actually, what we just want is some basic information off these farms to understand kind of where they're at, what they're doing, so we can understand what the product is that we're buying. So it's kind of a win-win. The farmer gets to understand the information they have and the data they have, and they're in control of it in a simplified way. But also, the manufacturers can see their farm as well and their supply chain, and see where that they can either do a project. Originally, I actually did in a previous job. We were working with a client that wanted a lower carbon dairy product, and so we were able to pick a certain amount of farmers within our supply chain that had a lower carbon footprint. But the issue then was with the actual data wasn't able to get to the client, and it really was a gap in the market in terms of like the client was willing to pay more money, but there was no way to prove the carbon footprint of these farmers to get that like chain of events to create that value. And so that's where this is going to be an increasingly important conversation when people want to spend that money and want to improve their sustainability. For example, this is where this comes from, and this is where VSAG can help.
Mm. So then, how are farmers responding to this so far? Because trust is important, right? Especially when you're asking people to suddenly provide more data than they are used to.
Hmm. Yeah, so I mean, we launched it in Ireland at the Ploughing Festival, which is in Ireland. It's this huge, it's the biggest agricultural market you're going to get. And so we launched it with farmers, and we got them to use it and give them their feedback. So we're still at a very early stage, and this is what we're trying to understand, and we're trying to get that feedback in that real life setting. So we got the information back from the farmers, and they were more than happy to understand it. It was speaking the language that they used. They understood the terminology that was being used, and as long as they were getting something in return. And so this is where the expectation is that the client would be expecting to pay. It would just be bringing the value back. So the client would spend more on this product, which then therefore would get its way back to the farmer. So they would have a benefit into actually providing this data. It's not just that they would be providing it for free.
So then again, I mean, what happens if this problem isn't solved? I mean, because this goes beyond technology. This could actually um affect who gets access to certain markets or who gets left behind. Right now you're just piloting in Brazil. and it may take a while for you to connect with other farmers, I mean, in different regions. So imagine, of course, you can connect with so much, right? But
Yeah.
so what happens to these particular set of people that you cannot reach, you cannot go through the technical process, the complex process? um what happens to
I mean,
them?
that's the problem at the moment. So the manufacturers are seeing kind of their easy wins. So, if they see, if I buy, from a previous example, if I buy potatoes from Ireland, then I get a carbon footprint of this. But then actually the global averages would mean if I can buy it from somewhere else, it might be lower. So then they will just stop buying it from that country that has the higher the carbon footprint, because this is what they need, and they're under pressure to reach the targets that they've set out. And so this is the way to be actually say, well, even within a country, you would be able to then find um, a lower carbon footprint, or the product that you require, or the sustainability strategies that you require, and that's where it lines up with it.
Mm, wow. So now I'm really more concerned now for the farmers. So it means that your company has to really reach more farmers at this stage right now, because it's really clear that um, many farmers are going to be left out, especially if they cannot comply with this, of which
Yeah.
they may find it difficult to comply because of how technical the process is. So I think we need more of VSAg, or you have to expand rapidly, like you have to be
Yeah.
really fast,
Yeah.
because now you're leaving out some countries that are not complying, of which is very it's going to be bad for the farmers, I must say. So
Yeah, I think this is just, this allows them access to the market. It allows them to keep up with how the market is moving, and that information, and that drive for data, and that drive for knowledge. Um, and it puts them back in a bit more control, so that they have that access. It's not that they're just left to their own devices, and to see, like, and have to be able to react to the market. This is them saying, this is the data I have, this is the farm I have, and these are the processes that I use, and having that ability to be able to communicate that with the farmer at scale. So the idea with the VSAG is that it can be scaled very fast once we get the right clients, and once we get that ball rolling. Because I think once people understand what, at the moment, when you're getting a carbon footprint, how much the averages are using, and it's not necessarily getting the accurate data, and this gives you the infrastructure and the tools to be able to reduce your own carbon footprint, and act on the information you have then.
okay, so do you probably have like any plan, let's say next 5 years, how many countries we can cover or something?
So that's what we're working on at the moment. So yeah, we launched in Ireland. We have offices in the US as well, and then we're working in South America at the moment. But I think at the moment we're very much like, we're obviously, it's a new product, but we want to launch with anyone who's interested, and we want to hear from anyone that would have further like interest, and by all means reach out to us, because I think it's something that we want to share the knowledge on, and share our expertise, and share the opportunity of this. When I saw this podcast, for example, with Africa, it's a completely untapped market for us, and it would be something that we think would really be able to benefit in Africa, to be able to, stand amongst the global markets, to see kind of how they can provide the data, and how they can provide their products to this global market.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing your plans. I also have been thinking about development markets and African agriculture specifically. So do you think that farmers in emerging markets are at risk of being excluded if these systems become more demanding over time?
I think there's just an element that the farmer can. I think, it's very much, people discuss this in boardrooms, or, for example, in the cities, where you forget actually what the reality is like of a farm. And I have that direct comparison every day, living on a dairy farm myself, and seeing that, it's just making sure that the farmer has that control, and making sure that they stay ahead, because I think it's just, that's what people want, that's what the market needs, and also it gives the money back to the farmer. So I think that's where we really want to go back to.
Okay, so looking ahead, what do you think of all of this? Where do you think all of this is going? Do you see sustainability reporting becoming a normal part of agriculture globally over the next few years?
I do. I think, like, seeing it for how it created in Ireland originally, and how now that's almost like it's the basic expectation in Ireland. That is, it's the baseline. That's what has that expectation within a manufacturer. They would just expect to have that information. And so that's what regulators require, and that's what these reporting frameworks require. So I think that is going to be the norm. I think the likes of, but then I think with the increase of AI, the increase of tech and the digital network, I think that's where VSAg is tapping into that. It's understanding that, yes, there is these farmers that could potentially be left behind. But the way that technology is going now in the AI infrastructure, we're able to provide a really simple method to get this scalable and to get this information out there, and to not make it cumbersome, and not to make it that the farmer needs to fill out another 500 pages of whatever information they need. This is a simple way to do it. And that's, I think that's where, there's a lot of, it's not bleak, there's a lot coming with it. That I think, the digital and AI wave will help with.
Yes, I agree. I agree. I'm glad we have technology now in place and AI that can help still simplify some of these things. And I really appreciate the work that you do at VSAg. Well done.
Thank you very much. Yeah, no, it was great to speak to you. Thanks so much, Sharon.
Yes. So for farmers and agribusinesses listening right now who are hearing about all of this for the first time, what's one thing that you think they should start paying attention to today?
I think it's understanding the global market to see where these products are going, to understand, a farmer, where their product is going, what co-op they're going to, or how this information, or how their product is going. So therefore, if you're following the train of your product, you also need to, therefore, the data needs to follow that as well. And that's what's going to be coming now down the line, is that information does need to follow on as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me today. I think this conversation was really, really important. I mean, because sustainability reporting is not just a policy conversation anymore, right? It's beginning to shape how agriculture functions globally. And farmers
Exactly.
need to be a part of these conversations. So,
Yeah.
thank you so much for your time. And thank you to
Thank you.
everyone listening to the Let's Talk Agriculture podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, share, and join again for more conversations on agriculture and food systems. Again, my name is Sharon, and have a lovely time. Cheers.
You have been listening to the Let's Talk Agriculture podcast, a production of LTA Studio. Keep the conversation growing. Follow and share wherever you get your podcasts.